Hello and welcome back to the Subjectively Correct podcast, a podcast where two movie-loving pals choose a movie each to present to the other according to a randomized theme. For this episode, the Wheel of Fate decided for us to talk about remakes. So we're going to be talking about two movies that have previously existed in a different form, so to say. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see if they stand on their own, if they do something fresh with the already existing source material, or if they just reiterate something that already existed. My name is Matt, and with me is my co-host and friend, Josh.
Hello, I'm Josh. How are you doing?
I hope you're doing good as well.
Excellent.
I don't know if that wasn't a full sentence. But so remakes are usually, I believe, nobody is really clamoring for remakes, I don't think. It's usually a thing that is more associated with lazy corporate cash grabs and shit, because probably, the already established pre-existing thing is gonna put more asses in the seats than the original.
And I would add to that, Hollywood.
Right.
Because a large portion of all Hollywood movies are remakes of some sort of foreign film, if you're an American.
Yeah, very true. Especially like in the Japanese horror market, there's so many American remakes to...
Yeah.
I guess it always like surprised me that they go through that whole effort to just reproduce a whole movie just so audiences don't have to read subtitles, basically. It's really funny to me.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of bad remakes, like all those Japanese horror remakes. Most of them don't really add anything to the source material. There's stuff like the American remake Quarantine, based on the Spanish movie Wreck, which is an amazing original horror movie, and the American movie, from what I've seen, is basically a tired, almost one-to-one copy. Or the Psycho remake starring Vince Vaughn, based on the classic movie Psycho, which is 99% genuinely a shot-for-shot remake, which is a wild experience to have, but not a good movie.
It's an interesting idea, though, to do it like shot for shot.
Is it though? I don't know.
I don't think it's necessary. But
it definitely isn't. No, I almost picked that one just so we can talk about it, but I opted for a better movie. There are plenty of good remakes though, like for example John Carpenter's The Thing, which we talked about in our pilot episode, as it's one of my favorite movies of all time. That's an excellent, good remake. And there's like stuff like the, Planet of the Apes is a franchise that is made again and again. And there's all sorts of things in there, like the divisive Tim Burton reboot or remake, whatever you want to call it, that maybe tries to do something else, but kind of fumbles the ball in the eyes of most people. I liked
that one.
I mean, I don't hate it either, but it's not like regarded as a great movie, I don't think. And then there are, of course, decades later came the recent Planet of the Apes, I guess, quadrilogy it's now, or whatever that's called. 4 movies, I believe there are now, which are very good, though the line between remake and reboot is very arguable here.
Well, and that's something we can talk about in at least one of our films, because
100%.
I have some things to say. Because how far can you go from the source material and still call yourself a remake?
Yeah.
Rather than just inspired by or something like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's I don't think there's like a hard cut anyway in that whole subject. It's all subjective, of course.
I'm sure it's all it's down to whatever you reckon and who you are and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, some remakes are closer than others, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So since you got the older movie, do you want to start or do you want to say something before that about remakes in general?
No, let's do it.
All right.
So the film, dear listeners, that I have brought to Matt this week or month, I always say week for some reason, is Martin Scorsese's The Departed, which is a remake of a Hong Kong movie, or Chinese movie called Infernal Affairs from 2002. And the original I've actually seen as well and is really good. It's different enough to make it worth watching both if you like one of them, but it's very, very close. The plot follows very closely the same kind of flow, and the same characters are in the movie who do the same sort of things. So if you haven't seen The Departed, it is essentially, I'm now talking about the remake. It is essentially a Boston mob movie in America. And this is not really giving anything away or spoiling anything, but it's kind of a cat and mouse game between undercover cops and insider dirty cops as they try and figure out who each other are and, you know, bust the case wide open. So it's directed by Martin Scorsese. Departed's written by William Monahan, and it has an all-star cast, you might say, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark, Martin Sheen, Ray Winstone, Vera Farmiga, Anthony Anderson, and Alec Baldwin. And there's actually a whole long list of other people. And I'm sure as you watch it, you'd recognize lots of people and go, oh, I've seen that guy before. And, oh, I've seen that person before. And, you know, it's one of those sorts of movies. But the three main characters, there's kind of 4 or 5, I guess, but the three main characters are Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. They are the focus of the whole piece. And essentially, again, not giving too much away, but Jack Nicholson is like the mob boss of the Boston Mafia. And Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio are both cadets who go through the state police kind of training and become state policemen, except Matt Damon is actually working for Jack Nicholson because he's giving him tip-offs and stuff of when the cops are about to raid him or, you know, mess up his criminal activities. So Matt Damon's kind of the inside rat, while Leonardo DiCaprio, before he even gets hired, they kind of, Mark Wahlberg and Martin Sheen kind of say to him, hey, we're going to put you in prison and pretend that you're actually a criminal and you're going to go undercover. And so he ends up working for Jack Nicholson and being part of his mob group, but he's actually working for the cops and trying to essentially undo them from the inside. So you've got all this kind of intrigue as to, there's all the tension about whether each one will get found out by their respective opponents, I suppose, if you want to call them that. But also then, are they going to achieve their goals of either, you know, catching Jack Nicholson's character or absolving Jack Nicholson's character and sending him free kind of thing. And it's the thing I like about this kind of movie is there's no real twists or surprises in that sense. It's all pretty much laid out on the table and you know who all the characters are, you know what their motivations are, you know who is the undercover cop, you know who the rat is in the police, all that kind of stuff. It's more about watching them try and kind of outdo each other and play that kind of cat and mouse game of hunting each other down and covering their tracks and trying not to get caught and all that kind of thing. Because interestingly, like Matt Damon's character, one of the things he gets hired to do early on is to look for the rat in the state police, which is himself. So, you know, that in itself brings some interesting scenarios. And then the rest of the cast are really good too. Like I think Martin Sheen's really good. I even think Mark Wahlberg's really good for the character that he plays, which is pretty one note, but
yeah,
kind of does the job, you know. And Alec Baldwin as well. This is a great kind of comedic Alec Baldwin. How Alec Baldwin can sometimes be a bit serious here and there, but I think in his older age he's become more of a comedian and likes to ham it up a bit. And I think there are some really good moments in this movie where I found myself laughing my ass off at Alec Baldwin. So, you know, there are those moments. But ultimately, I think what it comes down to is, while you've got all this kind of crime stuff going on and everything, it's also a bit about how people can cope with this sort of stress and scenario. and how these characters kind of get beyond themselves in order to cope with things. Because both Leonardo DiCaprio's character and Matt Damon's character have to do things and act certain ways that are kind of, not ways that any normal person would act. And, they have to make decisions to maintain their cover kind of thing in order to continue achieving. But, how far do you become a criminal before you're not an undercover cop anymore? Or, how much policing can you do without giving away the fact that you are the rat inside the police force, or, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I found this to be a very good remake because, while obviously it's not Hong Kong police doing very Chinesey things, it's retransposed to Boston, and it's kind of very Bostonian in that sense. Like, they seem to have lent into the fact that they're in Massachusetts and kind of taken that into account. And I think it's a decent remake, and I think it's a good film. But by all means, Matt, tell me what you reckon. Did you enjoy The Departed?
I'm really curious about the original movie, honestly. I was trying to get that in as well, but I wasn't able to watch it. Although I got multiple questions about the differences, to be honest. But yeah, The Departed itself, I feel like that's one of those movies that you keep hearing about as one of the greatest things ever. I feel like that's one of those titles. And I personally, honestly, never had any interest in watching it. I think if it wasn't like for something like this podcast, this wouldn't ever show up on my TV screen, by my choice at least. But I can see I think I can see why this is so beloved, which is partially things I agree with and partially things I personally probably don't really agree with. I mean, it's clearly a well-paced, filmed, and written story that has all these different threads interlining, and it carries that very well. I personally always have the worry with these kind of sort of convoluted crime movies that I will not be able to follow it. Though with this movie, it took me a while. It took me like a full hour or something to really get into it. But from there on out, I was quite engaged with it. And like you already said, the cast is full of recognizable people, and like Leonardo DiCaprio is somebody I love, and he does a great job. And here, Alec Baldwin, you already mentioned him, he's a great guy in here. Mark Wahlberg, who I don't really like usually, does a great job in this role, although the writing with some of these characters is kind of grating to me, and maybe also a bit aged. Like, the whole thing with the super vulgar masculine language in the police office thing, I kind of get that it's at least partially on purpose, probably to show like the dude bro patriarchal systems in the police departments or whatever, something like that. But I also, it kind of felt like parody to me at a lot of time, especially the longer it went on. The way they just threw around these like school ground slurs at each other all the time, it was weird to me. And I also like, this is just me making assumptions, but I also kind of feel like there's a specific crowd that loves the movie for all these hard-boiled dudes just calling each other the F word and whatever. And that's not really the vibe that I care to be exposed to for longer stretches of time, if you know what I mean. And it kind of clashed.
Totally.
It kind of clashed to me with the well-written actual crime stuff after a while, at least. You've seen the original movie, and I could see that being a gritty depiction with hard-boiled characters and all of that stuff as well. But how did it somehow translate from original to remake, or was this just here done by Scorsese?
Part of the reason I wanted to pick this film was not just because I like the film. I agree with you with the whole like hyper masculine dude bro cops kind of thing, which I kind of take as a bit authentic as well, because having worked in certain circles with groups of dudes and things like that, as parodied and ridiculous as it is, those sorts of things do exist.
Yeah.
And those sorts of crowds do exist. And I've worked with a bunch of dudes who are the most crass, rude, horrible kind of conversationalists you could think of. So it kind of felt a bit authentic to me in a way. Not in a good way, and not something I necessarily find appealing, but nonetheless. Yeah. And that stuff, you'll be pleased to know, is very much missing from the original.
Good.
From the Hong Kong version, because it's not it's not much of a Chinese kind of cultural thing, I don't think. I think that's very much an Americanism of the remake, as opposed to how people conduct themselves professionally in Hong Kong, which the original feels more like. And the downside, I think, to Infernal Affairs is it doesn't hit quite as hard as The Departed does, I think. Like, it doesn't have those solid beats where you kind of get hit with a bunch of story and you're like, whoa, okay, that's happening now. And I feel like The Departed did a good job of, like you say, pacing it out and then hitting you with specific beats and like, okay, we're heading into Act 3 now, bam, you know. Whereas Infernal Affairs kind of felt more like a constant vibe from start to finish, not so dynamic in its range. However, it does very much follow the same sort of plot, like I say, and the narrative is very accurately remade in The Departed. Like, if I showed you both these films without ever telling you, you would go, oh, it's the same film.
Right, yeah.
You know, it wouldn't surprise you at all, or you wouldn't question it at all. You'd be like, oh, this is obviously the same film. But yeah, obviously different setting, different sensibilities because of culture and all that kind of thing. But yeah, the original I think is very good and the writing is very good, but it's much subtler in a way that a lot of Hong Kong cinema can be. And there's still that same, though, tension of when each of the main characters are about to get caught or not, and, you know, how they cover up their tracks and, you know, play that kind of cat and mouse game, which I think is the heart of the film or the story.
Yeah.
And, you know, what makes it interesting, basically.
I also noticed that the original movie is like almost a full hour shorter. I guess they really fleshed out the story a lot with The Departed. That's like the thing that I was wondering the most about.
Well, I think in one way, Martin Scorsese loves to make longer films.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. And I think that's an interesting debate, though, because I've got no problem with longer films, but is it longer because you don't know how to make a tight story, or is it longer because it needs it and deserves it, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I always question that when I see a longer film, as in, like, does this need to be longer, or have you just not edited it enough? You know?
And like thinking back on The Departed, I can't really think of like a sequence where I would say, yeah, that could be left out or whatever. It feels pretty calculated.
I think there's a few for me. There's a few like Jack Nicholson kind of monologues that could be shorter, I think, or just left out, where he's like basically just being Jack Nicholson, and you're like, yeah, we love Jack Nicholson, but he's just like being Jack Nicholson and like, oh, I'm a freaky guy, I'm a mob boss, and I'm talking some crazy shit, and that's kind of the whole scene, and it's like, yeah, we could probably do without that. So it feels like they know it's Jack Nicholson.
True. I think they let the actors improvise a little bit too. Like, there was one scene with Jack Nicholson and DiCaprio where they finished their dialogue, they finished their scene. Jack Nicholson's character left the scene, but came back, did a little joke, grabbed his cigarette, and I'm pretty sure that was just improvised stuff, which is, I mean, maybe not, but if so, it's cool that they let shit like that in, and that shows you that they have like good chemistry in character and stuff. It's always fun to see that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I never actually thought about that, because to me it felt really it felt like part of the script to me, like, because in that moment he's kind of testing Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah. So, and he's just being really creepy to him in a way.
True.
So him coming back is kind of seeing if he could rattle him a bit or something, you know?
It felt to me a bit like when Jack Nicholson's character comes back behind DiCaprio. First of all, DiCaprio's expression of really not knowing what is happening right now behind him kind of felt very authentic to me and less like actor stuff. And the way that Nicholson really made sure that he's in frame, I don't know. It felt it could very well be improvised.
Yeah.
I could see that at least.
I know what you mean. Like, it is definitely an odd little part of the scene that stands out.
It's very
one
good.
way or the other. Maybe it's just really good acting, and so you think it's so natural.
Maybe. True.
Maybe not though. But well, and I agree with what you said with Mark Wahlberg as well. Like, I think Mark Wahlberg can be in the right role, he can be good. In a lot of roles, he can be not everyone's cup of tea. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't mind him personally. Like, I quite like watching films with Mark Wahlberg. I find him a bit quite charming, but I don't think he's the best actor in the world.
No.
But I think in this role, he was placed in the role well.
Yes.
Because he fulfilled it. And it's not the biggest role as much as it's quite an important role.
Yeah.
Because for listeners, he plays the cop who basically one of the cops who takes care of the undercover policeman. So he's one of the only people who knows who the undercover cops are. Everyone else is kept in the dark. And he's quite an aggressive character where as soon as anyone asks him anything, he's like, go fuck yourself, get out of here, kind of thing, like quite literally.
Yeah.
And just abuses them until they stop asking him. And but I do like, without spoiling the very, very end, I do like the ending. Because I feel like his role in the end is actually quite satisfying. But
I also felt like it's one of those, maybe the first Mark Wahlberg performance where I didn't actually see him as Mark Wahlberg. He seems a bit different in this one. Can't really say why. No, that's a good thing for sure. Yeah. But also, can I mention a detail? They had the guts in the soundtrack to include Pink Floyd's "Comfortably Numb," which blew me away. Not really. I don't feel like Pink Floyd is really much used in movie soundtracks. Probably really fucking expensive anyway.
I was going to say, I imagine they'd be really expensive.
Yeah. But I did notice that it wasn't the original. It felt like a weird cover version, although the vocals felt authentic. It was really strange. So I looked up the credits. It is a cover version by a band literally called The Band, which Scorsese apparently has connections with and made a movie about at some point. But the vocals are still actually by Roger Waters. So it's like a half cover version, and it's really strange to me. It was funny.
As a mega Pink Floyd fan, I can tell you that version that is on the soundtrack, without seeing, it sounds weird because part of the vocals are done by Van Morrison.
Oh.
As well as Roger Waters, because this is after Roger Waters left the band.
Right.
And kind of like had his little shit fit and tried to copyright The Wall because he invented it and all this kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
So he went on tour in the late 80s as The Wall, like Pink Floyd, even though the rest of the band weren't involved. So he included a whole lot of other artists like Van Morrison, and he had heaps of other people singing songs like Joni Mitchell, and I think Springsteen even got in there somewhere, or, a whole bunch of people. Yeah, I think it came from that kind of era, and that's why it sounds a little bit different, because it doesn't have the original vocals, but it still is basically Pink Floyd anyway.
I guess so, huh?
In a weird version, yeah.
It was really interesting inclusion to me, that whole song.
Yeah, but I imagine Pink Floyd are very much like Led Zeppelin, where it just costs you millions of dollars just to even think about using the song.
For fucking sure. Yeah. Another song in the soundtrack, though, that left an impression on me. I think they played it twice, at least. Like Dropkick Murphys I was gonna say shipping up to Boston or whatever it is. I get it. It's in Boston.
That's basically
we
like
Irish,
the unofficial theme music.
Yeah. we got Irish gangsters. I get it, but it's like the stereotypical Irish song, maybe through this movie. But like it's like one of the songs nowadays hearing that in a movie that takes itself mostly seriously, it felt. I did chuckle. I did laugh when that came up. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Well, a funny story as well. That to me, that's a very Hollywood choice of soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's almost a committee choice kind of thing. But I remember when I first watched this film, and I think I mentioned it on Twitter or something when I was actually using Twitter.
Yeah.
And I said something like, "Oh, cool to hear Dropkick Murphys because I like them anyway."
Yeah.
And I've got a few of their albums, and they're a good band. And I said something about how they're an Irish punk band, and ended up having an online argument with someone who said they're not Irish, they're from Boston. And I'm like, yeah, but do you not understand the history of Boston?
Yeah.
and the Dropkick Murphys is like, no, they're not Irish at all. They're a Boston punk band, and that's where you're getting confused, you idiot. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. Like,
you got them, idiot.
Let's go live our lives. Like,
you fake fan of Ireland.
I know. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Shit, dog.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like, to me, that's like the unofficial theme music of the movie because they do use it a fair bit.
Yeah.
And like I say, they do lean into the whole where the Boston mob kind of vibe because the accents are really thick.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try and do one.
No.
And, they all kind of look like they just got off the boat from Dublin anyway. Like in what they're wearing, like they're all wearing like flat caps and cardigans and shit. And so it's kind of funny in that sense because it is kind of Hollywood. But the thing I do like about the movie is mostly the writing and kind of pacing of it. So
the writing, pacing, and the performances for sure. That's like the holy trinity here.
Yeah. And yeah, it is a stat cast, and that's the thing. I can see how it could be off-putting for some people because it's very Hollywood in that sense.
Yeah, it's super American.
But
honestly.
even so, I think it's a very good production of this story. Even with its flaws and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we get to the big.
Sorry, like I said, I get why people love it so much. No, go ahead.
So what number would you put on it?
Yeah, that's the difficult part. It is very much one of those films where I see the technical value of it, of the production, but it's probably not exactly my cup of tea. I had a decent time with it once I really got into the story, but it is not the kind of story that I that stays with me, like that sort of thing. It's purely subjective, so I'm probably not gonna give it that high of a rating. It's probably gonna land on the lame rating of 7 out of 10 for me. It's a good movie, but not gonna be in my favorites.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Yeah,
I kind of thought honestly, I thought that's probably about where you'd land.
Yeah,
because when I first saw this film, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was like 5-star, top tier, everything, and it just blew me away. But in subsequent watchings, and maybe as I get older or see more things, or after seeing the original as well, all that kind of thing, I have kind of knocked it down a little. And these days, I'd probably give it either it would still be like an 8 or a 9, I guess, for me out of 10.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm not sure where I'd land on either the kind of 4 out of 5 or 4.5. Because I still do really like it, and I have rewatched it a number of times and enjoyed myself still. So,
yeah, I would
no denying that.
I would still be interested in seeing the original and seeing like a more subdued and comprised version of this.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely recommend you watch it, especially knowing what kind of stuff you like. Because if you get a chance, check it out.
Yeah,
because it is quite different, even though it's like. The thing I like about it as a remake is it's the same script. It's technically not, but it feels like it's the same script, but made by two very different directors, obviously, and different casts and people in different worlds. So it's really interesting in that sense because while it obviously is a different script, I'm not trying to say it's a carbon copy.
Yeah.
But it's close enough that you kind of, like I say, you go, oh, this is the same film, but it's obviously made by very different people.
So you would,
And that's what I think is interesting.
yeah. So you would definitely say, remake and original do their own shit in a successful way without taking from the other. In a bad way.
Yeah, and I think they both came out pretty much the same time as well.
2002
the
and
original was
2006. Yeah.
So they're only 4 years apart anyway. So they're pretty, comparable in that sense. It's not like there was a 30-year gap or something, and then they decided to remake it.
Yeah.
I think interestingly enough, I think the Hong Kong version, Infernal Affairs, it's a whole series. Like I think there's Infernal Affairs 2, and there might even be a 3.
Yeah. 3 movies, I see.
It kept going. Yeah. So that says something as well, I think.
And Infernal Affairs stars Tony Leung Chiu-wai. We both like that dude. Yeah. That's cool.
We saw him in last month's movie.
Yes. Was it last month?
I think so.
Might be, yeah. Probably.
But yeah, it's a great cast for Infernal Affairs too. So yeah, maybe if anyone listening, if you have seen The Departed, go check out Infernal Affairs because it's rad.
Yes.
And I'd highly encourage seeing the Chinese original with subtitles, might I add.
Yes, I wanted to say that as well. No dubs allowed.
Yeah. It'll be funny if the English dub for Infernal Affairs has like Boston accents or something just because.
Oh my god.
Then I'd probably forgive The Departed a bit more. So,
Jesus.
It could be that's part of the remake.
Jeez, yeah, that would be wild. Okay. Guess it's time to move on to my epic pick of the month.
Yes, a very spicy, in my opinion, one.
Uh-oh. Are we gonna fight again? Okay.
I don't think so.
Let's see where this goes. So I picked The Invisible Man from 2022. This is a horror movie directed by Lee Whannell, who also made a movie in 2018 called Upgrade, if anybody has seen that or not. That's a recommendation. It stars Elizabeth Moss, Aldous Hodge, Storm Reed, Michael Dorman, Harriet Dyer, Oliver Jackson Cohen, and a bunch of other people in smaller roles. It is written by the director Lee Whannell, who also wrote the original Saw, which I think is a good script. And the story is loosely based on H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man novel. Yeah, I picked this one as a quote-unquote remake of the 1933 Invisible Man because they still have, they are both based on the same source material and they still both carry the same core concepts of the story but use them in completely different ways. The 2022 movie is about a woman named Cecilia who escaped her super rich, abusive partner after years of being like controlled and manipulated. And as she finds shelter at a friend's house and tries to adjust to normal life, she still has to deal with the trauma of those years of abuse and is constantly afraid that her ex-partner will find her again and pull her back into his manipulation. One day she receives the message that her ex-partner is dead and left her a lot of money. And as things start to look up for her, slowly strange things start to happen around her, which puts her family and friends against her and even makes her start to doubt her own senses. And she begins to believe that her ex-partner is not dead at all, but in fact, because he was a super genius in the field of optics, created a suit that made him invisible and uses it now to stalk her and take back control over her life. The original, well, I haven't read the book, but the original movie, which from what I gathered is the 33 movie, from what I gathered is very close to the book story, is about a man who finds a way to make himself invisible, but then goes mad with power and the chemicals that he induces. And it is about the man as the protagonist losing his shit and going nuts. And here in the 2022 movie, we still have the man that finds out how to get invisible and uses that power to for malicious gain. But we watch this story this time from the perspective of the victim, the partner that survived the basically domestic abuse and now has to live with trauma. Of course, it is in typical horror story fashion played up with this fantastical idea of an invisibility suit and whatever. But at the core, I believe this is just like a really cool story about how domestic abuse can literally, well, not literally, but can be invisible for outsiders, and how manipulation, gaslighting, whatever, can make the victim completely doubt even her own senses and be trapped in her own inability and lack of agency. And in my opinion, Invisible Man 2022 uses those bits of the source material really well to put that in a fun, spooky, and very uncomfortable exploration of those themes, with, I believe, a very good performance by the lead actress as well, by Elizabeth Moss, who really goes through it in this movie. So you already alluded that you might have an opinion here. I can't wait to hear what you thought of this.
Well, I'm going to save that for a second because
okay,
the first thing I want to say about this movie is I haven't seen the original. I have not read the book. I have the book on my shelf, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
but I'm very much aware of it. I don't live under a rock. I'm aware of the H.G. Wells Invisible Man. And what I know about it makes me believe that this movie is very loosely based on that.
Yeah.
Like the only relation is that there's someone who is invisible, and that's about it.
He has the same last name though as the character.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Griffin, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, it reminded me more of I can't remember when it came out, but the Kevin Bacon film called Hollow Man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which has a similar kind of premise again. He's like a scientist who discovers how to turn himself invisible and then ends up basically doing a whole lot of nasty shit.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Everyone around him. And I've seen that one. So
yeah,
that's probably why I related it to that a bit more. And to be honest, I didn't hate it. It wasn't great, but I didn't hate it. So, but I do love me some Kevin Bacon, but that's a whole nother story. This movie though, The Invisible Man, I was kind of a bit annoyed at you for picking this. I have to admit. I go into these with the spirit of cool, I'll watch whatever you tell me to.
Oh, shit.
But I was kind of a bit annoyed that you made me watch this before I watched it. Because I was like, oh my God, I'm not big on horror films. Well,
right.
No, let me clarify. It's not that I'm not big on horror films. I like horror as a genre, but I get too scared is the thing.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I don't dislike it as an art form genre because I think it's really cool and opens up some really cool ideas for, character designs and storytelling and all that kind of thing.
Right.
But I get too scared, so I try and avoid horror most of the time. Otherwise, I stay up at night, scaredy cat in my bed, wondering when the ghosts are going to come and get me. And I never can really tell which horror is going to be okay for me, like which ones are going to really scare me and which ones are going to not. So, for instance, when we watched The Thing, that was just rad. I didn't mind that at all. To me, that's just like a sci-fi film.
Yeah.
And none of it scared me in that sense. Like, even though it's very much in the horror genre, I can see that. But I didn't find it personally very scary.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I've seen the trailers for this film when you suggested it to me, and I thought,
fuck this.
It's going to be one of those jump scare filled things that is just going to make me look around my house at the middle of the night wondering who's there kind of thing. But again, what I may say next may surprise you. Because I fucking love this film. I thought it was great.
Let's fucking go. Oh my God. Please go on.
it was rad, man. Like,
Dude, fuck yeah.
I mean, you kind of mentioned it when you were describing it, but I think because part of why I loved it was because this film to me is more about domestic abuse than it is about a scary man who no one can see.
Yes.
You know, because a lot of the stuff that they focus on is the gaslighting of our lead female, and she really goes through the whole gamut of the abusive partner kind of experience where, and they talk about it quite accurately as well, from what I understand. I have not been a participant or victim or otherwise of domestic abuse, so I don't know firsthand, but I have studied it a bit in rah. So there's parts in the movie where she's describing him and the kind of things that he used to do to her, i.e. he'd be manipulative and exclude her from her friends and her family, and he'd do things to kind of cut off those kind of personal relationships that she has outside of their own relationship. And he would do things where she would eventually feel like she can't really think for herself. She has to rely on him for everything. And, you know, all these kind of manipulation tactics that exist in the real world and nasty motherfuckers do, and is very much a part of domestic abuse. And this is why people find it hard to leave domestic abusive partners and all this kind of stuff. So when it started going down that kind of angle, I actually started really enjoying it a lot more.
Yes.
Because I thought it went from being a scary man who you can't see to actually quite a clever, I think, allegory or clever take on what it must feel like to be a victim of that kind of abuse. And even down to the fact where him being literally invisible is kind of like, it might sound cheesy, but I think it works, where it kind of plays into the fact that no one else in her life can see what he's doing to her, because they literally can't see it in this film. But if you were then to relate it to real life, I know there are plenty of examples of people who go, oh, but you know, that I know that couple, and yeah, that guy's a really nice dude, but behind closed doors, he's a complete fucking nightmare. And so it is a very hidden kind of thing that you experience, and it is an invisible kind of character that you're kind of, you know, with. So to interpret this film in that sense, I think gives it a lot, well, basically raises it a lot higher than if it was just scary invisible man.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
And so, and to that end, I really liked the way it was written, and I liked the way it was, the direction and the choices they made with what to focus on, because I feel like that was kind of their intention as well. Like, I don't feel like I'm pulling this out of thin air.
No, I don't
I
think
feel
so.
like the people who made this movie, whoever made the decisions, whether it's just the director/writer or there's other people involved, whatever, I feel like they were very intentionally trying to make some sort of reflection of what it's like to be in an abusive relationship like this, even though it's very heavily a literal kind of interpretation of this dude is actually invisible, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that sometimes. To me, that's like good sci-fi. Like,
yeah. I mean, in a way, all horror stories, I mean, in a way, all stories, but specifically horror stories are usually like used for us to unpack real life experiences through some fantastical allegories or whatever. And in that way, the literally invisible man through some dumb techno suit just works perfectly as the story embodiment of a very real threat that doesn't actually take on such a literal
well, and I like
look.
how that's kind of the only leap of faith you need to take.
Yeah.
As in, they don't ask you to do much. They just kind of go, okay, accept the fact that he's got an invisibility suit. And if you can do that, then come along for the ride and, you know, we're going to have a good time. But because it is good then, because you get those moments and those, you get that tension where no one believes her at all when she's like, there's this invisible guy attacking me. And they're like, well, I can't see that. I can't see what's happening. To me, it looks like you're making it up. And, rah, rah, rah. Because, again, that's kind of, I imagine, what a lot of people experience in real scenarios. Yeah. But I like how they captured that, I thought. And Elizabeth Moss as well, who, personally, I can take or leave as an actress. Like, she hasn't quite got her under my skin yet, as far as I don't know if I like her or not. Mm-hmm. I did like her in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I haven't seen her in heaps of stuff. It took me a while to warm up to her, though, because one thing that often puts me off a lot of characters, not so much actors, because it's not their fault, but if an actor has to be stressed and scared basically the whole time they're on screen, I find that very hard to enjoy because it's all a bit melodramatic and a bit over the top. And, this is why disaster movies don't really do much for me, because I'm like, yeah, it's all very scary and stressful, but we know it's a movie. Come on, let's sort it out. Whereas after the initial kind of half hour or so, and it got into the story proper, I will say, once it hits like Act 2, I think it's off and running, and she's doing an amazing job, and the film like really gets into its stride. But even having said that, I don't think that could have happened without what happened in Act 1, where it wasn't necessarily the most compelling part of the movie, but she's essentially escaping the abusive household.
Yeah.
And hiding out with some friends. That had to be done, and so I'm glad they just kind of did it straight up, and they started the film with her leaving, because it's like, yeah, okay, we can fill in the gaps. We don't need to see him being abusive or whatever. We can just kind of fill in the gaps and go, what? Cool. We understand. Off you go. Run away. Good on you. We don't need to have it all spelled out for us in that sense. But that's why I like the movie, as far as the storytelling side of it, because they didn't beat you over the head with stuff either, because while they did use obvious kind of metaphors and things and blah, 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 there wasn't any point where the character kind of said, oh, by the way, here's what's actually happening.
Right, yeah.
I kind of appreciate that, because, I didn't need them to look at me and tell me what I was already thinking, kind of thing.
Yeah.
However, No, it's all. This is a good thing. Trust me.
Oh, shit.
The thing that really tipped this from being a good movie to one I actually went, damn, that was really good, is the direction and the cinematography.
Yes.
Because you know what I'm going to say. Like, there are plenty of shots which are obviously deliberate, because you notice it, where they do one shots, but they'll be following Elizabeth Moss doing something, but then it'll just stop. And she'll walk off screen and keep doing something, but you're just looking at like the corner of her bedroom or something. And we know this is the Invisible Man. Like, we know this what the film is from the get-go. So you're constantly looking at all these empty spaces going, oh, where is he?
Yeah.
And for a good portion of the film, he ain't there. Or at least he's not revealed, put it that way. He could be there, I don't know, because he's invisible. But they kind of show you these empty spaces a lot of the time, or they'll frame her in such a way that she's in the corner of the shot. So there's this whole 3/4 of the shot that are just empty. And for me, that really builds tension like hugely, because I'm there trying to see something move in the darkness kind of thing. Or I'm waiting for that reveal or that jump scare, but then it doesn't come because nothing's there. And you're just like, oh, damn you, I'm so stressed now.
Yeah, the cinematography in this is something. It has the long, quiet shots, the stationary shots that you mentioned of things to build the atmosphere in. But it also has the super kinetic camera movement during the few scenes of action. I think that's like somehow a trademark of the director, because the 2018 movie Upgrade that I mentioned uses this a ton as well, which is why I'm recommending that one as well. And I like that. We even though this is the story of the Invisible Man is pretty mellow, uncomfortable, and serious, we still get the occasional just like not so action, just for fun. And it is also really done well with the interaction of the invisible person and the real people. It does the whole package, even though it didn't really have to do any action at all. but they do it well. And I love. Yeah. I wanted to go back to Hollow Man since you mentioned that earlier. Because we both watched that movie. It's been a long time since I watched that movie, but I remember being disappointed by that one because I remember the person that does go invisible. Most of what he did with that power is sexually abuse woman or sexually harass woman, just being a creep that way, which is
Pretty much,
very one note, very direct, very not creative, which is why I love so much more in this one, in The Invisible Man 2022. It never goes the sexual route. It's all about the very real and much scarier, arguably much more complicated mental abuse. There's the one scene, and I guess spoiler alert, if you want to see this movie, maybe fucking go away. Spoiler alert, there's this one scene later in maybe the third act or whatever, where she finds out through a nurse in a hospital that she is actually pregnant, and she has no idea when, how, why. And that's it. That's it. There's no creepy scene attached. There's no dramatic freak out or whatever. It's just this line, and we know what it means, and it's just creepy as fuck.
But do we? Because like after that, later in the piece, again, spoilers ahoy, but to just continue that train of thought, I thought the same thing. Where I thought, okay, so possibly she has been sexually abused by him while he is invisible. But then later on, they talk about how he knew that she was taking birth control while they were together, and he'd actually switched them out so that they weren't birth control. So she thought she was taking birth control, but he actually wasn't, while they were a couple. And so I figured that's where the pregnancy came from.
But wasn't that way too long ago?
Not necessarily. Well, that's what I'm not sure. I'd have to watch it again to figure out. But
and I'm pretty sure there's literally a line where the nurse says it was very recent that the pregnancy must have started. I don't think it's meant to be from the actual relationship. I think that's like probably years ago or something.
Yeah. Well, and I either way, I do agree with you. I like that they didn't have to go there anyway. Like even if they just kind of hint at it, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
That's not the point. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah. Because I agree, that is enough. That we don't need to know anymore. Like it doesn't hurt the story to not know anymore. I think its strength is that it is mostly about, it's not about sex, it's about power and control.
Yes.
More than, sexuality or lust or desire or anything, which is more the Hollow Man kind of thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, this is way more about having power and control over someone and gaslighting them to hell, essentially.
Yeah.
And the other thing, well, how do you feel about the ending?
So I think there's different ways to actually interpret that one. I'll take it as staying ambiguous without a clear answer. And I like it if that's intended or whatever. I like that we don't actually know if it was him or his brother, but she just does her revenge anyway. I like that take of it. I don't know if that's meant to be the interpretation, but I like it that way. I don't really need the sort of twist ending of the brother potentially being the mastermind or whatever. I don't really care about that plot point. How did you feel about it?
Well, yeah, that stuff, I kind of accepted that it was her ex for the most of it and the way she told it, basically. The bit that I thought was it took me a second, was like basically the very, very end, where her very good friend, who is a decent dude the whole movie, who's a cop that she lives with after she's escaped her, abusive relationship, he's kind of listening into her wearing a wire while she talks to her ex, and she's trying to basically get him to confess that it was him, but he doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, at this point we're knee deep in spoilers. So
yeah.
Instead, I love the fact that, yes, she pops on the invisibility suit and basically makes it look like he kills himself because on the security cameras, they can't see her then because now she's the invisible one. And she basically cuts his throat and makes it look like he's doing it himself. And then I love how she comes into the room and is like, oh my God, oh, you're dying. Oh, why'd you kill yourself? And she calls 911.
Yeah.
But the really satisfying part for me is how she kind of steps out of the line of the cameras and just her whole expression changes and she just kind of looks at him so that he knows that she knows that he knows that they all know that he's fucked.
Yeah. Exactly.
But the bit that kind of made me question it, though, was she's then leaving that scene and her mate, who's the cop, who's basically heard all this over the wire, is like, you know, running to the house to try and, you know, stop the confrontation or whatever. We know that he knows as well. And she says to him, well, the security cameras have only seen him kill himself. They haven't seen anything else. And basically, I'm leaving now, so catch you. And him being, you know, the quintessential good guy, you can see him struggling with the fact that, okay, he knows that she's killed him, but he also knows that it will look categorically like a suicide and that he's a complete fuckwit and probably deserves to be killed. Let's put it that way. And I don't know if it was just a really good bit of acting on his part because I really felt that uneasiness and that moral kind of ambiguity in his performance where his character is going, what the fuck do I do? Because I feel like that's kind of my own feelings were reflected in that where, you know, I am pretty much a pacifist who I don't feel like an eye for an eye is a good thing. And I don't think people deserve to be killed or whatever for pretty much anything, even the most heinous shit. They deserve to suffer consequences for their actions, don't get me wrong. But taking a life is like, for me, such a huge thing that if I relate it to kind of real world scenarios, which I did for most of this movie, it leaves me in two minds where I'm like, I do kind of support her and I wouldn't, if it was me, I wouldn't dob her in kind of thing. Like I wouldn't tell on her, but I don't know if I'd be happy about it either.
Yeah.
You know? But the one thing I do like about it is that it didn't turn into some ridiculous revenge plot. Like she did get some resolution, but I feel like that was more her setting herself free because as long as this guy was around, she'd always be afraid and always be cautious of the fact that he might be trying to torment her or follow her or stalk her or do whatever, basically fuck with her in one way or another.
Yeah.
So the only way to be sure about that is to know that he's dead by your own hand kind of thing, even because we thought he was dead before, but obviously he wasn't. So in that sense, I kind of go, yeah, that was a really good ending and I'm glad that she got that resolution. But then I'm still kind of left with the whole moral question, which after saying all that, I kind of feel like is a good thing because it shows that it is relatable, I guess, in a way, because, you know, that's where I don't know if I am that black and white. Like until something actually happened to me or someone I loved, I might make a different decision. But I can theorize all I want, but, you know, until something like that happens, you don't really know. So, yeah, I think it's kudos to the film in that sense for making me think all these things and raise these kind of questions without falling on certain tropes that I hate in other movies. Like, there are some other movies where if this was made in a different way, it would have ended up being a very kind of on the nose, in your face, girl power kind of
glorifying the revenge
drive.
So,
where, like there are other movies that are made which have been applauded for being like super woke feminist movies or whatever, which I will say I am not against. I'm all for that.
No, there's a space for that.
But I also don't agree with, you know, if someone's an asshole to you, it doesn't give you carte blanche to be an asshole to them. Like, rise above it, be the bigger person, and fuck them up in a different way. Like, and that's what I think this movie's more about, The Invisible Man. With, I feel like Elizabeth Moss's character kind of went through all this trauma and everything to the point where everyone then knew about it, but there was still a bit which she couldn't control or couldn't get rid of, so she took it into her own hands to then finish it off, which to me is very relatable and kind of authentic, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. It got me thinking, and I really liked it for that. So I was very surprised at how much I liked this film, mostly because
Me too.
but I think it's a credit that it's less about this is look, scary jump scares, and isn't this invisible guy scary, which is kind of what Hollow Man was trying to do, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, I'm invisible, isn't that scary?
Yeah, fuck that movie.
Whereas this one, I really like. I love a good allegory. I love a good metaphor. I love a story that looks like it's one thing, but is actually talking about something else. You know, to me, that's like cool, awesome storytelling.
Yeah.
Like you said, with sci-fi, like to me, sci-fi is at its best when it's like commenting on humanity and all that kind of stuff, which can be kind of cheesy, but it's also why it's so good, you know? Like you use something so detached and unreal to comment directly on something that is so authentic and relevant. And I think that's what this movie did. And that, coupled with the awesome cinematography, I think is what kind of shoved it over the edge to being actually a really good movie. So yeah. I'm glad I watched it.
I'm so happy you like this. and I guess to bring it back to the previous versions, right? We already talked about Hollow Man, about how that is more about the sexual abuse of power, with a very one-note use of that. And the 1933 Invisible Man is more like a comedy than really a scary film. It's just fun to see this weirdo lose his nuts. And I still recommend that movie to anybody, to you as well, because just really fun, right? It's not scary at all. Plus, very cool invisibility special effects for 1933.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really, Invisible Man 1933, Hollow Man, and then this Invisible Man, all sort of based on the same source material, completely going for different things to more or less success. But I do believe The Invisible Man 2022 does the most, for lack of a better word, valuable thing by really trying to say something and packaging that in a fun, cinematic way. I'm so glad you like this one. Makes me so happy.
I think that's where it surprised me, because I was expecting something more like Hollow Man, where it's like, like Hollow Man very much just tries to be, isn't it scary that you can't see this dude and he's a bit of a psycho? So you kind of,
He's a bit of a psycho.
But like you're scared of him anyway, but now you can't see him. So now you're even more scared of him. And look at these computer graphics that we can use.
yeah.
Like I do enjoy the thing of like the reveals in this, where, you know, at one point she throws paint on him so you can see him. At one point, my favorite point is basically, and I knew it was coming, but I still loved it. There's a bit where she feels like she's being watched, and she runs outside, and you can see her breath in the cold. And then behind her, you just see someone else's breath, but you don't see them. And that's where the framing and everything, I knew it was coming, and I was like, oh, I bet we're going to see someone else's breath. But it was still really satisfying when it happened. I was like, yeah, there it is.
Yippee.
Pretty much. Well, and as a final thought, I really liked I know it's, you know, a bit unbelievable or whatever, but I like the idea that he's got like an invisibility suit on, and he hasn't taken some kind of chemical serum or something.
It's a
like
bit more
in Hollow
believable.
Man.
Yeah.
But not even so much believable, as in it's more, to me, that's where it ends up being more sci-fi. Like it's like a sci-fi thriller to me, as opposed to a full-on horror genre flick, you know? And I think that's probably why I liked it more than what I was expecting. Because like from the trailer, it looked like, oh, it's trying to do the horror thing of, you can't see me and I'm in your house. But I liked that it kind of went the whole other angle of the kind of sci-fi thriller. So yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I think, don't have much else to say. It was really good.
So I guess it's time for you to give your numerical rating.
This is a hard one though, because like I literally, for anyone wondering, I watched it about before recording, probably about 4 or 5 hours ago.
Super fresh in your mind, yeah.
So it's very fresh in my mind, and so to that end, I'm kind of trying not to overhype it. So I'm probably going to sit on, like, I think I'd fall on like a 4 out of 5.
Hell yeah!
So an 8 out of 10, because that to me is like a very solidly good film with some good reasons, and I can't overstate how good the direction is and the cinematography.
Yeah,
like it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, definitely check out his other movies. Yeah,
even just for building tension and stuff. Like,
God, yeah.
The first half of the film, it's full of shots where you're expecting something to happen, but then it doesn't. And to me, that's the best kind of tension builder ever. Is the thing you don't see, not so much the thing that you see. So you're constantly expecting something to pop out or some reveal to happen, but it doesn't. So I found myself getting a bit stressed waiting for it.
It's like it's messing with you, with your own what you believe to be true. It's gaslighting the viewer.
Well, and I rock on.
We love that shit. Yeah, I this was the second time I watched this. I watched this like a couple of years ago the first time, and my rating definitely went up. Last time,
right?
I was like, yeah, cool shit, but I had some things I didn't vibe with, and I gave it like 7 out of 10 or whatever. But I'm with you now, 4 out of 5, the 8 out of 10. That's where it sits for me as well. It really, like the second viewing really elevated that for me.
Well, even like, I don't want to carry on too much because we've probably gone too long anyway. But
yeah, maybe.
Even like, I like towards the end, like the third act kind of starts with Elizabeth Moss in a mental hospital because everyone thinks she's gone crazy and killed her sister.
Yeah.
And so, she's saying all these things like, oh, there's a dude in the room with us, but you can't see him and blah, blah, blah. So of course everyone thinks she's fucking insane. And, but I like how that resolves as well. Like, they basically took it to a point where she baits him into attacking her and then attacks him back, like the invisible dude, which then brings guards from the facility she's in, and he ends up attacking all of them. And, at that point, it becomes obvious that she is not doing this, because as he's attacking them, I'm like, yeah, cool, they're in the corridor, there's going to be some security footage,
Yeah.
Like, this will absolve her from the things she's been accused of. And like, he even leaves some people alive, and it's like, yeah, they saw this kind of weird invisible dude, so they're going to be able to corroborate her story. And even just little things like that I really liked, because before that I was thinking, oh man, how are they going to get her out of this situation in a satisfying way without it just being some nonsense where someone happens to believe her and magic happens. Whereas again, that was very authentic kind of, this probably might be how it would actually happen if it did. So I appreciated that as well.
Hell yeah. All right.
Yeah, a very, very surprising film for me, because the trailer doesn't do it justice, if you ask me.
Yeah, I haven't even seen it, but I can imagine it goes for all the like stereotypical horror beats.
They basically show you a few jump scares. And that's it.
Yeah, I figured.
But there's so much more to it. So yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. I think it's time to wrap this up.
Well, before we do, would you rather...
Oh, shit. Oh, no.
Would you rather have an invisibility suit that you can use at whim, or be a mob boss with all that power and, people
listen, man.
Under your in your charge?
Listen, man. I mean, I guess it depends on the upkeep of the invisibility suit, huh? It's probably not going to last forever. But honestly, invisibility is such a crazy strong ability. Like, it's really simple effect, but you can do so much shit with it. I think I would rather take the invisibility suit. At least that's just one thing I have to worry about and not a bunch of goons that I have to wield. So, so I think that's actually a pretty easy pick for me. At least as long as that suit at least as long as the suit actually fits. I don't know who.
Well, and so long as you don't go mad with power.
Well, I think that's gonna inevitably happen. I've seen 3 movies where this happens, so
you can be the benevolent Invisible Man. The one who invisibly. You could be like the invisible Peter Pan. You can invisibly redistribute wealth.
I think you mean Robin Hood. Yeah,
Robin Hood. That's the one. Why do I think Peter Pan? They both wear green.
There you go. That's the one.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so as always, you can leave your stinky comments wherever you find fit. Maybe we will see them, maybe not. I always suggest new themes for our wheel of randomized things, which I'm gonna spin now to see what we are gonna be blabbering on about the next time.
Oh yeah, this is the exciting part.
It almost went to video games, which would have been fun, but we are actually gonna be talking about soundtracks and scores. So maybe I can find some more scuffed Pink Floyd cover songs in some movies.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting one.
It is actually, yeah. I've already had a bunch of movies in previous episodes where the soundtrack meant a lot to me.
Well, Hero from last episode for me, I love that soundtrack so much.
Yeah.
And I tend to like soundtracks like that, which are like, I'm not big on soundtracks that just compile a whole lot of pop hits.
No,
I'd rather
soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather an original score. And on top of that, I'd rather an original score which is perhaps culturally different to something I might have heard before, such as a traditional Chinese score such that there is in Hero and films of the like, where you have traditional instruments and compositions and that sort of thing. So that's the kind of stuff that really excites me. So we might end up with something like that. Who knows?
Yeah. I guess what we are not going to be ending up with, because you don't like those movies anyway, and they are a different category, we're not going to be having some musicals. That's not what this is going to be about. Just to be clear. Musicals we got as a separate thing. That's going to be its own episode if fate allows. This is just soundtrack and score.
We can only hope.
I would love to see a musical episode. I dream of that one. It's the 2 things you hate, horror and musicals.
Well, I'm picky about them, put it that way. I'm not. Hate is such a strong word.
That is fair. But yeah, soundtracks and scores. You're going to be listening to a lot of music.
I've got to go through my music library now, see which soundtrack I've actually gone and bought.
That's a good way to do it, yeah, actually.
Oh, the ideas are flowing, but let's finish up this episode anyway.
Right. But I wanted to say, maybe it's just a shit movie with a good soundtrack. I will. Well, it would be a funny pick for next episode.
This could be the case. I've just had an idea.
Looking forward to it.
And I don't know if you'd like it.
Even better. Okay, well, this was a fun one. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you sticked around to the end, I hope you watched the movies because they are good. And don't go invisible. It's not good for you. Or get in an Irish mobster group. That's not great for you as well. So
basically, don't be a dickhead.
Don't be a dickhead. That's it.
Yeah. That's what these movies taught me.
Exactly. All right.
Don't be an asshole. Try to be a good person instead. That might be fun.
That's the subjectively correct pro tip of the month.
Yep.
So
that's my tagline for these movies.
Very nice.
Don't be an asshole. Yes, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.